Hey guys, tonight we begin with the 6 levels of the samurai in feudal Japan, a world where steel and silence meant survival, and every sunrise might be your last. These were the warriors who shaped centuries of Japanese history, not just with their swords, but with their unbreakable discipline, their harsh codes, and sometimes their wild, stubborn spirit. From the dusty backroads of lost provinces to the shimmering halls of powerful lords, the samurai's legacy cuts deep, leaving scars and stories that still echo across time. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your story begins long before you ever hold a sword, long before you know the difference between loyalty and fear, or the weight of a samurai's name. It begins in the rough, restless mud of a peasant village, somewhere in the shadow of distant mountains, where survival is less about bravery and more about endurance. This is where most journeys start, for almost every legend who ever wore armor or carried steel. This is level 1, the Ashigaru, the humble foot soldier, the anonymous heartbeat of every army, and the place where countless samurai stories rise and fall, forgotten and unrecorded. Imagine the air at dawn, cool, damp and sharp, carrying the smell of wood smoke and flooded rice paddies. You wake to the scrape of a straw mat, the distant cough of an ox, and the whispered worries of your mother, already tending a pot of thin, steaming rice. Your father's hands are a map of scars, hard as the earth he works, and there's a haunted tiredness in his eyes, a man who's seen more famine than peace. You and your siblings chase each other through narrow dirt lanes, the world a patchwork of muddy footprints and hopeful, hungry faces. Most days are the same. You help in the fields, tending the rice with your bare feet sunk in mud, or gathering kindling in the forest, always listening for rumours from the road. If a merchant passes through, there's talk of wars and taxes and lords whose banners change with the wind. Sometimes, after a long day, the elders gather the children and tell stories by firelight, tales of samurai who rose from nothing, of heroes like Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who once planted rice as a peasant boy but climbed almost impossibly to rule all of Japan. The grown-ups pretend not to listen, but everyone wants to believe that someone, somewhere, might make it out. But for most, there is no escape. You are the harvest, and you are the shield. When the Lord's men come, it's not with gifts or protection, it's with the demand for bodies to fill out his armies. Conscription is not a choice. You watch the faces of your friends as they are called, eyes wide with the panic of children who realize that stories do not prepare you for war. Your mother says little, but her hands shake as she ties up a cloth bundle for you. Some rice, a flint stone, a faded charm from the shrine, a silent prayer that you will return. They give you a spear, not because you are a warrior, but because there are not enough swords to go around. Sometimes it's only bamboo, with a point sharpened by someone in a hurry. Your armour, if you get any, is a mismatched collection of lacquered plates and rusty scraps, tied together with fraying cord. More likely, you march in what you wore in the fields, shivering in the wind, with only a thin coat to keep out the cold. The march begins. You join a column of frightened boys and old men, led by officers who barely glance at you, except to shout orders or curse your clumsy steps. The path is long and brutal, through flooded valleys, over muddy hills, past burned-out villages where the crows gather in silence. You sleep where you can, eat what little you're given, and learn fast that complaining earns you nothing but a smack or a scolding. By the end of the first week, the blisters on your feet have turned to raw wounds, but you keep walking, because falling behind means being left behind. No one waits for the weak. Sooner or later, the battle comes. It's not like the stories. There are no duels beneath the cherry trees, no elegant speeches or clean victories. There's only confusion, a roar of drums and shouts, the clang of metal on metal, the choking stench of blood and wet earth. You rush forward because everyone else is running, and you hope desperately that your feet will carry you through to the other side. The enemy is as lost and scared as you. The first time you see someone die, it feels unreal, as if the world has cracked and you're falling through. Some don't make it. Some are luckier than others, catching a glimpse of the officer's banner, finding the right moment to duck, or simply vanishing into the smoke and chaos. You learn to count every breath, every heartbeat. You remember the faces of those who fell beside you, if only for a while, until they are replaced by new recruits, just as lost as you once were. At night, huddled around a flickering fire, you hear the old men mutter about the 7 samurai, how peasants like you once fought to save a village, how sometimes courage means standing your ground when everything else is lost. If you survive the day, there are new tests waiting. Officers send you to dig trenches, carry the wounded, or scour the fields for scraps of food. You sleep in barns, in ditches, wherever you can find a little warmth. Sometimes you glimpse the real samurai, the men with 2 swords and silken banners, riding past you as if you're invisible. You wonder if you will ever be like them, or if the world has already decided your fate. Yet, even here, in the mud and terror, legends are born. Every now and then, a name rises. A boy who stood his ground when others fled. A peasant who saved a wounded officer. An Ashigaru whose courage caught the eye of someone with power. Toyotomi Hideyoshi himself began like this. His future unwritten and unimagined. Most Ashigaru die as they lived. Unknown, unremarkable, swallowed by the next season's mud. But for those rare few, there's a path upward, a Lord's favour, a lucky break, a single moment of bravery that changes everything. The rest of the time, you endure. Between battles, the life of an Ashigaru is nothing but work. You haul water, chop wood, build siege ladders, patch holes in battered armour, always on call, always at the mercy of a commander's whim. You steal moments to dream, but you don't let anyone see. In the quietest hours, you remember your home, the smell of your mother's cooking, the laughter of your siblings, the river where you learned to fish. Sometimes, you wonder if it's worth it, if any of this suffering has meaning beyond the next order, the next day, the next battle. And yet, you keep going. You have to, because the alternative is nothing at all. Among the ranks, you meet men who have survived for years, old Ashigaru who know every trick, every shortcut, every way to stay alive. Some tell tales of seeing Hideyoshi himself back when he was just another hungry boy with hope in his eyes. Others say it's all nonsense, that luck is all that matters. Still, the stories persist, keeping hope alive in the darkest nights. When a battle is won, you may get a small coin, or a new pair of straw sandals, or a battered helmet from the pile of the dead. Maybe, if you're truly lucky, an officer remembers your name. For most, it's back to the fields when the war ends. Scars hidden under old clothes, stories left untold. But for those who rise above, the world changes, a chance at becoming something more. A Kosho, a page in a lord's household, the first step on the long road to true samurai. The dream is fragile, but it's real. All it takes is survival, and the will to keep moving forward when every bone in your body tells you to stop. The Ashigaru is the start and the end of so many tales. The faceless, forgotten soldier who carries the weight of empires on his shoulders. Not a hero, not a villain, just a human being trying to make sense of chaos and carve out a tiny place in history. You are the backbone of every army, the mud that holds up the marble pillars, the shadow behind the shining blade. Tomorrow you will wake again to the sound of drums and distant thunder. The sun will rise on another day of marching, another day of fear and hope, and maybe, just maybe, your story will not end here. Because every samurai legend, every tale of glory, betrayal, loyalty, and loss begins somewhere, and more often than not, it begins right here, with a barefoot boy, a bamboo spear, and the quiet, unbreakable determination to survive. You don't become a samurai in one step. If you survive the mud, the battles, and the long marches of Ashigaru life, sometimes, just sometimes, a door opens. Maybe you caught the right officer's eye, or maybe your village had a family connection, or maybe you were simply lucky enough to be standing in the right place on the right day. For a chosen few, the next chapter is not a battlefield, but a gate swinging open into a world you've only glimpsed from afar. A world of discipline, ritual, and relentless, invisible pressure. You become a Kosho, a page, a servant on the path, a candle burning low in the shadows of great men. Imagine that moment, the day they call your name. You're handed a bundle, your only possessions, wrapped in old cloth. You say goodbye to a mother who tries not to cry, to siblings who look at you with a mix of jealousy and awe. Your father might nod, barely, hiding whatever hope or pride he feels beneath a mask of stoic silence. For a moment, you're not sure if you're being rewarded or exiled. You walk, heart pounding, through narrow roads and fields that seem smaller with every step until you reach the manor. High walls, tiled roofs, banners rippling in the wind, the smell of incense, the taste of fear on your tongue. Inside, nothing is familiar. The floors are polished wood, smooth as water. The air hums with rules you haven't learned yet. When to bow, when to speak, when to disappear like smoke. You're assigned to a senior retainer or an officer, and from that moment, your life is not your own. There's a uniform, too stiff and too clean, that marks you out as both privileged and powerless. Among the other pages, you quickly learn the new pecking order. Some are sons of samurai, others from merchant or craftsman families, and all of you are united by the constant anxiety of making a mistake. The days are long and precisely measured. Before dawn, you're awake, sweeping courtyards, refilling water jars, polishing armor until you see your own worried face staring back at you. Your hands memorize every dent and notch in your master's helmet. You run errands through chilly corridors, carrying scrolls or tea, always silent, always watching. The older samurai walk past, voices low, faces unreadable. You listen to their stories when they think you're not around. Tales of lost battles, near misses, the friends they left behind. You hear the names of men like Oda Nobunaga or Tokugawa Ieyasu, legends who were once young pages themselves. It's hard to believe that anyone so powerful could have ever been so small. Once or twice, you catch a glimpse of your master practicing with a sword at dawn. The grace, the speed, the certainty, these are things you can barely imagine possessing. On rare evenings, when the world feels gentle, he might let you hold a wooden practice sword, testing your grip, correcting your stance with a tap or a quiet word. Sometimes you remember the old stories, like the one about Kenshin Himura, a wandering swordsman who began as nothing, trained in secret, carrying more burdens than pride. Maybe you let yourself believe, for a moment, that greatness is possible for someone like you. But mostly, your life is about service and silence. You scrub floors, you fold clothing, you bow until your neck aches. Etiquette is everything. How to pour tea, how to kneel, how to speak only when spoken to, and always in the right words. The wrong move can earn a scolding or a blow. The right move brings nothing at all, except another day without shame. Sometimes you're punished for things you don't understand. Lessons taught in bruises or hunger. Sometimes you catch the rare kindness, a pat on the shoulder, a word of encouragement whispered in the night from another page who's been there longer, who survived what you're just learning to endure. You become a collector of secrets. Listening is your best skill. You learn who favours which samurai, which retainer is out of favour, whose anger is to be feared, and whose temper is just bluster. You carry messages between rooms, sometimes hearing news of war or rumours of betrayal before the adults do. You learn to keep your mouth shut. At night, the pages gather in shadowy corners, trading gossip, dreams, and warnings. There are rivalries, of course. Ambition and fear churn together beneath your careful manners. Every one of you hopes to climb higher, but none of you can afford to stumble. When the lords hold banquets, you serve in silence, moving like ghosts through the incense-thick air. Sometimes you see great generals, men whose names are known across the provinces, men like Tokugawa Ieyasu, who was once a hostage in enemy hands, learning humility and patience while dreaming of power. You wonder what secrets he learned as a boy that made him a shogun as a man. Some days, when your chores are done, you sneak out to the training ground. There, in the half-light of dusk, you pick up a stick and mimic the moves you've seen the older samurai practice. Your swings are awkward, your balance poor, but every repetition is a prayer, every bruise a silent vow to do better. You remember the stories of young warriors who rose from obscurity, not just Hideyoshi, but countless others whose names didn't survive in the scrolls, but whose spirit lingers in every hopeful page. Letters home are rare. When you write, you pretend everything is easier than it is. You tell your family about the beauty of the gardens, the luxury of the Lord's house, the honour of serving so close to power. You don't mention the loneliness, the aching hunger in your chest, or the fear that wakes you before dawn. You promise yourself that someday you'll send a letter, not as a page, but as a true samurai, with your own household and your own sword. There are lessons beyond the chores and the etiquette. The samurai code, Bushido, is drilled into you, not just loyalty, but courage, honesty, respect, and self-control. Sometimes you see the gap between the code and the reality. You watch older samurai break the rules, bend the truth, or lose themselves in sake after dark. You realize early that survival isn't always about following the rules, but about understanding which rules matter and when to keep your head down. The world is more complicated than the stories you grew up with. Still, the rituals matter. You bow to your elders, you light incense at the household shrine, you whisper prayers for protection from illness, from war, from the whims of men more powerful than you. On festival days, you watch the samurai in their finery, wishing you could be one of them. You listen to musicians play old melodies, taste rare sweets, and for a moment you almost forget the weight of expectation pressing down on your shoulders. Sometimes the world outside the walls seems impossibly far away. News arrives of battles won and lost, of villages burned, of lords rising and falling. You hear of heroes like Oda Nobunaga, ruthless and brilliant, or the wandering swordsman Miyamoto Musashi, whose path began with humble training and ended in legend. In these moments, you realize that every hero started as someone unseen, someone like you. There are moments of danger, even here, when the household is tense, when the Lord is angry, when rumours swirl of enemies near the borders. You move through the halls like a shadow, hoping not to be noticed. You learn to measure every step, every word, every breath. To serve is to survive. The wrong word, the wrong gesture can mean exile or worse. You know stories of pages who vanished overnight, their names never spoken again. Yet for all its fear and hardship, there's a strange pride in being so close to the centre of things. You are trusted with secrets, with messages, with the daily rhythms of power. You learn to read the subtle language of glances and silences, to tell when danger is coming, to prepare for whatever tomorrow brings. In the quiet of your small room, you practice with the wooden sword your father carved for you long ago, hands moving in the darkness, repeating the moves you've seen, dreaming of the day when your service will be rewarded. The stories you heard as a child, the legends of pages who became generals, of orphans who became lords, burn in your mind. You cling to them because hope is a powerful thing, and in this world, hope is sometimes all you have. Sometimes, in the deep of night, you hear the distant drums of war, or the muffled cries of men training in the yard. You close your eyes and see yourself not as a servant, but as a warrior, standing in the sunlight with a blade of your own, earning respect with every measured step. You vow not to give up, not to lose your place, no matter how hard the path becomes. The days turn to weeks, the weeks to months, and slowly you find your place. You move with confidence, anticipate your master's needs, learn to read the mood of the household before anyone else. The bruises fade, replaced by a steady strength, a growing sense of purpose. You are still a page, still far from the glory and terror of battle, but you are no longer the frightened child who arrived at the gate. You begin to understand what it means to serve, and in serving, to prepare for your own moment to rise. Someday, if you endure, if you're careful and clever and brave, you might earn the right to a surname, a sword, and a place among the samurai. But for now, you are a Kosho, a watcher, a learner, a spark in the darkness, waiting for your chance to ignite. And somewhere out there, other stories are beginning, other pages dreaming, other futures unfolding, other legends waiting to be written. You remind yourself, as you drift into uneasy sleep, that every great samurai, every name worth remembering, once knelt in the shadows just like you. Eventually, if fortune smiles and you survive the long apprenticeship, if you serve well, hold your tongue, and learn your lessons, there comes a day when the path opens again. The years as a Kosho have tested you, shaped you, made you quieter and sharper, like a blade ground against stone. One morning, without fanfare, you are called into a sunlit hall. Your master speaks your name, not as a question, but as a fact. There is a new uniform, heavier and more elaborate, a ceremonial set of swords, the Daisho, presented with solemn gravity. And suddenly, you are no longer just a page, but a samurai retainer, sworn to serve, to protect, to fight, and sometimes to die. It isn't glory. It's a burden, but it's also the moment you realize you are stepping fully into the river of history, the same current that carried names like Toshiro Mifune's hard-bitten warriors, or the 47 Ronin before you. You have joined the ranks of men who are remembered, if only briefly, by those who come after. The first sensation is weight, literal and otherwise. Your new swords feel unfamiliar against your hip, their lacquered scabbards tapping at your side as you walk. The armour, no longer borrowed or ill-fitting, is a second skin, creaking and stiff in the joints, but alive with possibility. Your family's name, if you have one, carries new importance now. If not, your service is your only legacy, and you clutch it tightly. A retainer's life is ritual and routine, but it is also anxiety, pride, and exhaustion in equal measure. You rise before the sun, your breath a small cloud in the cold pre-dawn air. First come the drills, archery, sword work, mounted practice if your lord is wealthy enough to spare the horses. Your body aches with the memory of old bruises from your page days, but now there is a new urgency. Every flaw is a risk, every hesitation a mark against you in the endless silent competition that simmers just beneath the surface of samurai society. Your duties are as much about patience as power. When the land is at peace, you patrol the borders of your lord's domain, boots sinking into muddy paths, eyes scanning the shadows beneath pine trees for the flicker of trouble. Sometimes you mediate disputes among farmers, settle arguments over water rights, or collect taxes from men who will never look you in the eye. You are judge and enforcer, both respected and resented. The peasants bow deeply, but you can see the flicker of fear or contempt when they turn away. Inside the manor, the social order is a chessboard, always shifting. There are the Hatamoto, elite retainers, closest to the lord, the Karo, senior councillors whose word can destroy or save a career. The rest are men like you, rank and file samurai who serve, endure, and hope for a chance to stand out. The barracks are alive at night, laughter, sake, boasts of old wounds and old loves. Sometimes you gamble, sometimes you sing. There is rivalry, always, because every man here wants to climb higher, or fears a fall. And there is camaraderie too, the bond that comes from knowing any of you might be sent to die for the others in the next campaign. Bushido, the way of the warrior, is preached at every meal and every meeting, but you quickly learn that not every samurai follows the code with the same heart. You see men who bend the rules, who take bribes, who lie when it suits them. There are those who cling to honor as a shield, and those who wield it as a sword against their rivals. Loyalty is demanded, but trust is rationed. Your lord's will is law, but his moods can be as unpredictable as the weather. Yet, there are moments when the ideals shine through the cynicism. You watch a comrade risk his life to defend a villager from a drunken superior. You see an old samurai, scarred and bent, recite poetry by moonlight, his voice trembling with beauty and memory. You hear stories of the 47 Ronin who sacrificed everything for loyalty and became immortal in death. You remember that the code, for all its flaws, is still something to aspire to. Your own family is changed by your new status. If you are married, your wife wears her pride carefully, tending to household affairs and watching the ever-present currents of gossip and alliances among the women of the manor. Children are both a joy and a risk, their fortunes now tied to yours in ways both sweet and terrifying. If you are not married, your elders are busy arranging meetings, searching for a match that will bring honour and stability to your line. Your lord's needs are constant, sometimes reasonable, sometimes capricious. You might be asked to ride out at a moment's notice, to deliver a secret message across enemy territory, or to stand guard outside the hall, while powerful men and women whisper strategies behind closed doors. At festivals, you stand straight-backed in ceremonial armour, sword gleaming, feeling the eyes of the village on you, half in awe, half in envy. You can almost remember what it felt like to be the barefoot child on the other side of the rope, straining for a glimpse of the armoured men who seemed so distant and untouchable. The armour is heavier now, but so is the knowledge of what you're fighting for. The weight of each decision, each hesitation, can be felt in your bones. There are moments when you feel the edge of the world, when a single word or gesture could topple everything you've worked for. You see others fall, demoted, exiled, forced to commit seppuku when they fail their lord. You see families destroyed by a single mistake, and you wonder if your own story will end that way. But there are triumphs too. You remember the first time you stood your ground against a bandit chief, the first time your lord spoke your name with praise. You savour the rare nights when peace seems possible, when the moon glows silver on the garden pond, and the world is quiet except for the soft hum of insects and distant laughter. There are legends you carry with you, the tales of Toshiro Mifune's stoic heroes, rough around the edges but unbreakable in battle. The true stories, too, like the 47 Ronin, whose years of patience and sacrifice became the very symbol of loyalty. In your mind, you wonder what you would do in their place. Could you keep your oath, even if it cost you everything? Would your name be whispered in awe, or lost to the dust of time? Day after day, the drills and duties blend into one another. The sword at your side becomes an extension of your arm. The bowstrings snap a second heartbeat. You ride in the rain, march under the summer sun. Feel the cold seeping into your bones each winter night. But every day you remind yourself, this is what you wanted, what you fought for, what you endured as a child to reach. And always, there is the pressure to rise, the rumour of promotion, the chance to become a Hatamoto, to stand at your lord's right hand. But for most, this is as high as you will go. The life of a samurai retainer is not one of endless glory or dramatic duels beneath the cherry trees. It is a life of service, long, hard, and uncertain. You measure your success in the moments of quiet satisfaction, a job well done, a friend's survival, a child's laughter echoing through your home. Sometimes, on the rare evenings when the world is gentle, you and your comrades sit around a fire and swap ghost stories, tales of wandering Ronin who never found peace, of loyal samurai whose spirits guard their lords even in death, of the strange dreams that come to men who spend their lives at the edge of a blade. You wonder if, someday, someone will tell a story about you. The seasons change, wars flare and fade, lords rise and fall, and still you serve, each day a quiet testament to perseverance, discipline, and a hope that somewhere, somehow, your life will matter. Because being a samurai retainer is not about fame or fortune. It is about standing your ground, doing your duty, and carving your story, however small, into the endless, unfolding history of Japan. You are not a page anymore. You are not a frightened Ashigaru. You are a samurai, sworn and tested. And as the sun rises on another day, armour cool and heavy on your shoulders, you step forward, ready to serve. because that is what samurai do in every era, in every story worth telling. But for a rare and fortunate few, simply being a samurai retainer is not the end of the climb. Some warriors, through unwavering loyalty, relentless training, and the courage to face both the sword and the politics of the court, rise even higher. They become hatamoto, the banner bearers, the elite. These are the men entrusted to stand closest to their lord, the personal bodyguards, the senior-most retainers who carry not just a sword, but the visible weight of their clan's honour. For most samurai, the distance between the common barracks and the hatamoto's gilded seat feels impossible, yet every lord's house holds those who made that journey, and their stories are lessons written in steel. To become hatamoto is to pass through 1,000 silent tests. It is not a single act of heroism, but a lifetime of discipline, of being watched by eyes that never blink. It might begin with a battlefield, a moment where, as arrows darken the sky, you step forward to rally wavering troops, your voice clear and commanding. Or perhaps you foil an assassination attempt in the night, standing alone against a group of masked intruders, the blood still drying on your blade when dawn comes. Sometimes it is quieter, a word spoken at the right time to avert disaster, a month spent gathering intelligence or brokering peace among feuding families. You are always measured, not just for your skill, but for your judgment, your restraint, your capacity to put the clan above your own heart. If the call comes, it might be little more than a summons to the inner hall. You kneel before your lord, who bestows new armour, a stipend, perhaps land, and above all, his trust. The rest of the household watches, and you feel their envy, their admiration, and their fear. From now on, every mistake is magnified. Every rumour echoes louder. Your success is not just your own, it is the reputation of your master, and in a way, of your whole generation. Your days change. Gone are the endless, repetitive drills of the junior ranks. Now, each morning begins with inspection, not just of your own armour and weapons, but of the men beneath you. You move along the stone corridors of the castle, checking the guards at their posts, your presence both reassurance and warning. When the household gathers, you stand at your lord's right hand, posture perfect, gaze unyielding. You must look calm, even when your heart beats wild. In every gesture, you model what it means to be the shield and the standard. Hatamoto lead the vanguard in battle. At the siege of Osaka, the Hatamoto of Tokugawa Ieyasu charged at the very front, banners streaming behind them, armour gleaming in the rain. Sanada Yukimura's elite were known for their crimson uniforms, a visible symbol of their willingness to die first for their lord. To ride in the vanguard is to live on a razor's edge, to know that your death might be necessary to buy just a moment for your master's escape, or for his final victory. Yet battle is only part of your life. The rest is subtler, more dangerous. In the audience chamber, you read the faces of visiting envoys, searching for the twitch of a lie. You memorize names and relationships, recalling old feuds and secret debts, sometimes stepping forward to mediate a quarrel before it turns to open conflict. At feasts, you are vigilant, discreetly tasting the sake before it is poured, scanning the crowd for hidden daggers. The line between friend and enemy is thin. Sometimes they are one and the same. Hatamoto are often sent as messengers on critical missions, carrying secret letters to distant allies, negotiating ransoms, or presenting the clan's terms to rival lords. On the road, you travel with a small escort, prepared to fight or parley at a moment's notice. Each village, each border checkpoint is a test. Can you command respect without arrogance? Can you sense danger before it strikes? Can you uphold your lord's dignity in places where his name alone is not enough? You are also a teacher, for the next generation watches your every move. Pages and junior samurai emulate your habits, copying the way you tie your armour, the way you greet elders, the calm you project in times of crisis. In the dojo, you teach advanced techniques, but you also teach patience, humility, and the ability to recover after defeat. Your own mentors may now be your peers, your rivals, or even those who answer to you. At home, life is a careful balance. Your family's fortunes rise and fall with yours. Your wife is no stranger to politics. Her alliances with other households can determine your children's futures. If you have sons, their training is twice as rigorous, for nothing is expected of them but perfection. Daughters are carefully matched, marriages arranged for advantage, every connection mapped on the unseen chessboard of the court. Yet there are rare, golden moments that make the burden worth carrying. A spring evening, the castle peaceful, you and your closest comrades sharing sake beneath blooming cherry trees. A letter from your lord, commending your judgment in a crisis. The silent gratitude of a villager you saved from injustice. Though you'll never see their face again, sometimes, in the quiet of your chamber, you take up brush and ink, composing a poem to capture the weight and beauty of a single moment. The sound of rain on armour, the taste of victory, the ache of remembering all those who fell along the way. The higher you rise, the thinner the air. Jealousy follows every triumph. A careless rumour, an envious rival, or a lord's sudden change of favour can send your world crumbling in an instant. You have seen good men, stronger, wiser, even braver than you, cut down by court intrigue or undone by the shifting alliances that rule every castle. You learn to guard your words, to listen twice as much as you speak, to keep your blade sharp but your heart guarded. Even so, nothing prepares you for the day when a friend turns foe, or when your lord's cause is lost and you must choose between honour and survival. History remembers the famous Hatamoto, the ones whose banners led the charge at Sekigahara, the ones who died unflinching on the walls of their burning castle, the ones who became legends whispered about in every dojo and barracks. But it also remembers those who fell, quietly and alone, their names fading from the records, their stories living on only in the lessons they left behind. There are nights when you walk the castle walls, looking out over the dark rooftops and farmlands, the lanterns glowing like scattered stars. The world feels both huge and fragile. Somewhere, in the distance, you hear the drums of a distant festival, a reminder that life goes on, with or without you. You think of your journey, from muddy fields to polished halls, from a frightened page to the man trusted to guard your lord's very life. Pride and fear mix in your chest, along with a sense of wonder that you have come this far at all. Still, you know nothing lasts forever. Even the mightiest Hatamoto can become a Ronin overnight, his lord fallen, or his own misstep costing him everything. The road from here can be straight or broken, but every step is a testament. You served, you carried the banner, and for a time you stood at the centre of power. And so you wake each day before the sun, armour cool against your skin, blade steady at your side. For as long as your lord needs you, for as long as honour demands, you remain the shield and the standard, the last barrier between chaos and order, ready to meet whatever tomorrow brings. Not every story in the world of samurai rises steadily up the ranks. Some lives bend, break, and wander away from the ordered world of lords and codes. If you're lucky, you serve your master well, keep your head down, and find a quiet place to grow old. But if fortune turns, if your lord falls, if you make the wrong enemy, or if your own spirit just won't bend to someone else's rules, you step into the shadowy country of the Ronin, the masterless samurai. There's a word for it in every language: exile, outlaw, wanderer. In Japan, Ronin means a wave man, a person adrift, cut loose from the shore, carried wherever the tides may pull. One day, you might stand at your lord's right hand, proud in fine armour, respected and feared. The next, it all disappears. Your master is gone, your stipend vanished, your very name perhaps forbidden in the halls you once called home. You wake with the sunrise, and suddenly the future is nothing but roads and empty fields. Some Ronin choose this path. Maybe your master's cause was lost, or maybe you refuse to bow to injustice, but most don't choose. They are made by history's merciless hand. You pack your swords and a few coins, say your goodbyes, or don't, and step onto the road, everything you own on your back. Some towns lock their gates when they see a Ronin coming. Others whisper, fearing both the skill and the desperation of a man with nothing left to lose. Life as a Ronin is a strange freedom. No more lord's orders, no more daily rituals or formal banquets. There are no more barracks to return to, no sure meal waiting at the end of the day. You drift between towns, offering your sword for hire, guarding merchants, collecting debts, even chasing bandits for a handful of coins. If you're lucky, you earn enough to keep your belly full and a roof over your head. If not, you sleep under the stars and trust to fate. The world can be cruel to a man without a master. But Ronin are also woven into the fabric of legend. Some become bandits, yes, or vanish into poverty and drink, but others carve new stories, stories that still echo today. Miyamoto Musashi was the son of a lesser samurai. Orphaned young, a wanderer before he was a man, he drifted from duel to duel, undefeated, his legend growing with each new town. Musashi never served a lord for long. Instead, he became his own master, author, artist, philosopher, a man who slept in the wild and lived by the sword and by the mind. His book, The Book of Five Rings, is still read by warriors and businessmen alike, a guide to the battlefield and to life itself. His legacy is proof that even outside the samurai order, a name can echo for centuries. But not all Ronin are lone wolves. Sometimes a cause unites them, a cause so deep that it draws men from across the land, bound together by loyalty more powerful than any lord's command. The story of the 47 Ronin is told and retold in every corner of Japan. Loyal retainers turned outlaws after their lord was forced to commit seppuku. They wandered the roads for years, enduring scorn, suspicion, and hunger. But beneath their ragged appearances they plotted revenge for their fallen master. On a snowy winter night, after years of waiting, they struck, storming the mansion of their enemy, avenging their lord's death, and then calmly surrendering to the justice they knew was coming. They died by their own hands, not as criminals, but as heroes, their loyalty praised in story and song. Their graves are still visited, their names still spoken, a reminder that even in exile, honour is not lost. The life of a Ronin is both a warning and a promise. For every Musashi or 47 Ronin, there are hundreds more. Faces lost to history, men who drifted into the shadows, their swords gathering dust, their stories untold. Some became teachers, selling their skills to train the next generation. Others found new masters, joining distant lords who needed strong arms and sharper minds. Still others faded into legend, ghosts wandering the highways. Their spirits said to haunt the lonely crossroads and dark woods. Yet there is a strange poetry to the life of a Ronin. Free from the rigid rules of a household, a man might finally ask himself, what does it mean to be a warrior if not to serve a single lord? Some turned to art, poetry, even Zen meditation. Musashi painted with the same boldness that he fought, brush and blade as tools of the same restless heart. The Ronin story is not just one of violence, but of transformation, a chance to reinvent, to search for meaning beyond the narrow paths of duty. Of course, the world looks at you differently. To be masterless is to be dangerous, untrustworthy, unpredictable. Laws are passed to restrict Ronin. Towns banish them, and in the great castles of the Daimyo, their names are spoken only as warnings. But children grow up whispering stories of wandering swordsmen, men who right wrongs, who protect the weak, who carve justice out of chaos. In times of peace, the Ronin is a threat. In times of crisis, he might become the last hope. Some Ronin are remembered as heroes, others as villains. The line is thin. Sakamoto Ryoma was a Ronin in a later age, a man who saw the end of the samurai order coming and helped usher in a new era for Japan. No less a warrior, for having no master. There are stories too of Ronin who lost their way, falling into banditry, using their skill to take rather than protect. The freedom of the road is a dangerous thing, a test of character as much as courage. Yet, the Ronin's path is a mirror reflecting what samurai life is truly about. Loyalty, yes, but also perseverance, the ability to adapt, to survive, to create new meaning when the old world falls away. Many who became Ronin found themselves forced to let go of everything they thought they knew, name, status, even their sense of self. Some could not bear it, choosing death or oblivion. Others learned to live in the gap between worlds, forging their own code in the wilderness. You meet other wanderers on the road, soldiers broken by loss, men with haunted eyes and calloused hands, women disguised as men, poets with blades hidden in their sleeves. Sometimes you share a meal and a fire, sometimes only a silent nod. You feel a kinship in their weariness, their stubborn will to keep moving forward. The old ideals do not disappear. Many Ronin keep the rituals of their former lives, tending shrines, practicing sword forms beneath the moon, whispering prayers to ancestors whose names are a comfort in the cold night. There are tales of Ronin who risked everything to protect a village, asking nothing in return, or who spent years searching for the man who wronged their master, vengeance burning hotter than hunger. There are also quieter stories. The Ronin who taught children to read, who became a healer, who found peace in a simple life, far from the noise of power. The world is always changing. Some say the age of the samurai is ending, that guns and merchants and new ideas are sweeping away the old ways. Perhaps they are right, but the spirit of the Ronin lingers, stubborn and silent, in the places between sunrise and shadow. You walk beneath towering cedars, your swords rattling softly with each step, the road rising and falling before you. Every village is a question, every town a test. Will they welcome you or turn you away? Will you find work or trouble, or a story worth telling? You move with caution, with pride, with a little bit of hope. Somewhere behind you is the world you lost. Somewhere ahead is the world you have yet to find. In the end, to be a Ronin is to live with uncertainty, and to find in that uncertainty a kind of freedom unknown to any man who has only ever obeyed. The lessons you learned as a page, the battles you survived as an Ashigaru, the oaths you swore as a retainer, all of them are still with you, shaping the way you walk, the way you see the world. You are no longer tied to a single lord, but to something older and wilder, your own story, written one step at a time, beneath the ever-turning sky. So you walk on, neither wholly lost nor wholly found, a shadow and a possibility, and somewhere, in the flicker of campfires and the hush of twilight, the legend of the Ronin continues, a reminder that even when the world takes everything, there is always a way forward, if you have the will to seek it. At the highest peak of the samurai world, above the battles and the barracks, above the long marches of the foot soldiers and the cautious games of retainers, there is a level few will ever reach. If the story of the samurai is a great mountain, the Daimyo stand near its summit, gazing out across valleys of rice fields, castle towns, and the hopes and fears of thousands of lives. But up here, the air is thin, the winds colder, and every step must be made with care, for the higher you rise, the more you have to lose. Most are born into this world, their childhoods spent in castle shadows, their toys miniature swords and banners, their playmates the sons and daughters of other lords. Others, though, clawed their way up from the mud and blood below. Men like Oda Nobunaga, who rose from obscurity to bend the land to his will. For the Daimyo, power is inheritance and conquest, calculation and fate, all braided together in a knot that is never quite secure. Your days as a daimyo begin in the quiet darkness before dawn. The castle walls are thick, the gates watched by men whose loyalty must be earned and maintained. Servants move like ghosts in the corridors, bringing news, petitions, and warnings. Every morning you kneel before the household shrine, offering silent prayers for guidance for your people, your family, and yourself. The decisions you make will ripple outward, shaping the lives of everyone beneath your roof and far beyond. The responsibilities are endless. There are rice yields to monitor, taxes to collect, disputes to settle, and always the dance of diplomacy with neighbouring lords. An insult, a careless word, or a perceived slight can spark a war that swallows villages whole. Your councillors and Hatamoto gather in the audience hall, their words weighed as carefully as gold. Some offer wisdom, others treachery. Your own mind must be sharp as any sword, ready to slice through rumour, panic, and the fog of war. Your armies are more than soldiers. They are networks of loyalty, lines of credit, and shifting allegiances. When you ride out, you do so beneath banners emblazoned with your family's crest, the air thick with the scent of lacquered armour and horse sweat. The peasants bow low in the fields, faces averted, offering up their labour and their silence. Every gesture, every decree is watched and remembered. Power is not just command, it is performance, vigilance, and the art of being seen. Yet, for all this grandeur, loneliness gnaws at the edges. Who can you trust when everyone stands to gain from your failure? Even family is no guarantee. Your eldest son is ambitious, your brother's eager for more land. Your wife, perhaps the daughter of a former rival. Every meal, every festival, every meeting is layered with meaning and tension. Poison is not just for the blade. It is in words, in glances, in the slow erosion of trust. At night, as you stare out across your lantern-lit courtyard, you remember that the higher your castle walls, the more isolated you become. Still, there are moments of real power and real beauty. On festival days, your castle comes alive with colour, banners snapping in the wind, music drifting up from the town below, processions of armoured samurai, and delicate women in silken kimono. You watch your people, their faces upturned, their voices chanting your name, and for a moment you feel the weight of history in your hands. What you build might last 100 years, or crumble overnight, but for now, you stand at the centre of the world. Some daimyo are remembered for their brutality, others for their vision. Oda Nobunaga was both, a man of genius and ruthlessness, whose innovations changed the very fabric of war. He welcomed Western traders, introduced firearms to his armies, and shattered the old order with a ferocity few could match. But power breeds enemies. Nobunaga died by betrayal, surrounded by flames, his legacy sealed in fire and legend. Others were architects of peace. Tokugawa Ieyasu learned patience as a child hostage, humility as a survivor of defeat, and cunning as a player in the endless games of the warring states. His victory at Sekigahara and the founding of the Tokugawa shogunate ended centuries of chaos, bringing order and stability at the cost of the old freedoms. Under his rule, the samurai would change, slowly caged by bureaucracy and law, the sword dulled by peace. But his name, too, endures, a symbol of endurance and quiet strength. Being daimyo is never safe. Every year brings a new threat, a failed harvest, a seditious vassal, the rise of an ambitious neighbour. You must balance justice with mercy, discipline with generosity. Sometimes you must be cruel, if only to keep the wolves from the gates. Sometimes your own heart rebels. You see the suffering in your towns, the famine after a poor season, the punishments meted out to the innocent and the guilty alike. You tell yourself it is necessary, but sometimes, late at night, you are not so sure. Marriage is a matter of politics as much as love. Your children are your legacy, but also your bargaining chips. Each alliance is a knot, binding families together with promises easily broken. The women of the castle watch you with keen eyes, manoeuvring for the best futures for their sons and daughters. Your own ambitions must always be weighed against the risk to your bloodline, the danger to your house. Even joy is never simple. In quieter times, you might walk the gardens, lost in thought. The cherry blossoms bloom and fall in a single week, beautiful and brief, a reminder that all things pass. You recall your own childhood, when you dreamed of glory, when you believed that honour and courage were enough to win the world. Now you see the cost of every triumph, friends lost, enemies made, innocence traded for a seat at the table of power. There are daimyo who fall as quickly as they rise. One mistake, one bad harvest, one storm too many, and your fortune can evaporate. A vassal might rebel, a son might betray, or the court in distant Kyoto might turn its gaze upon your lands with hungry eyes. At any moment, you might be summoned to the capital, forced to kneel before the shogun, your fate decided by politics and whispers. The fear never leaves you. You must always be ready to fight or to bow, to surrender or to strike. Yet there is purpose here. You are a shaper of destiny, a figure whose decisions will echo long after you are gone. You build castles, roads, temples. You pass laws that bring order or stifle it. Your scribes record your words for the future, hoping to preserve your wisdom and your glory. You commission art, poetry, and gardens, trying to leave behind a piece of your soul in stone, ink, and cherry blossoms. You hear stories from the towns below, stories of samurai who dream of glory, of Ronin wandering the roads, of peasants struggling for another mouthful of rice. You know that every level of the samurai world depends on your choices, your moods, your victories and failures. It is an endless burden, but also a rare gift, the chance to remake the world, even in small ways, even for a brief, shining moment. Some nights, when the wind is high and the castle creaks around you, you wonder if any of this will last, if your name will be remembered or lost to the turning of the seasons. You think of Oda Nobunaga, burned by his own men, of Ieyasu, who built an empire only to see it slip, little by little, from his descendants' grasp. You think of all the dreams and sorrows stacked like stones beneath your feet. But when morning comes, you rise again. You sit in the hall and hear petitions, settle disputes, sign decrees. You welcome guests from distant lands, read letters from Kyoto, listen to the gossip of your retainers. You walk the walls of your castle, the wind in your hair, your hand resting on the hilt of a sword you have not drawn in years. You remember what it took to get here, every risk, every betrayal, every sacrifice. You know, deep down, that the only way to hold power is to keep moving forward, one decision at a time, never pausing long enough for regret to catch you. The world outside your walls changes, guns replace swords, new ideas flicker at the edges of your domain, and you sense that the age of the daimyo may be passing. The shogunate will fall, the samurai will fade, and the castles you built will become tourist attractions, footnotes in someone else's story. But for now, you are here, alive at the centre of it all. You look out across your lands, hear the distant drums of a festival, or the low thunder of an approaching storm, and you know that everything rests on your shoulders. Every dawn brings a new challenge, every dusk a new reckoning. You have climbed farther than most can dream, risen to heights that leave you breathless. The cost is heavy, but so is the glory. You are Daimyo. At the peak of the samurai mountain, you carry the past and the future in your hands, and for as long as your heart keeps its steady, stubborn beat, you will strive to hold your place in the storm, to rule, to protect, to endure, and to leave a mark on the world that even time itself cannot erase. But even at the end of this climb, with the mountain of samurai life laid out before you, you realize the story isn't just about 6 levels. It's about everything in between, the days and nights, the pauses, the silences, the hundreds of small choices that shape a person. Every rank, every path, is more than just a set of rules or a name on a scroll. It's a way of living, a set of hopes, and sometimes a weight you can't quite shake off. Even in sleep. Across the levels, the rhythms of daily life were the true training ground. It wasn't just about sword drills or horse riding. It was the discipline of waking before dawn, kneeling in cold rooms for endless hours of calligraphy, practicing archery until your fingers bled. You swept the floor, tended the shrine, folded and unfolded armor again and again. These rituals shaped you as much as any battle ever could, drilling patience, humility, and attention into your bones. Food, too, was never just about hunger. A bowl of rice in a peasant hut tasted different than the feasts in a daimyo's castle, but both were reminders of your place. At every level, the way you ate, how you sat, what you said, who served and who was served, said everything about the world you lived in. The samurai could recite poetry at a tea ceremony and hours later ride out to war without a second thought. Strength and refinement weren't opposites. They were two sides of the same coin. The code of Bushido, that strict and almost mythic way of the warrior, hovered over every level like a ghost and a promise. It taught loyalty, courage, honesty, respect, self-control, and above all, the willingness to face death without fear. But in practice, Bushido was often as messy as life itself. Some men held to it fiercely, refusing bribes, risking all for their lord. Others wore it like a mask, preaching honor by day and breaking it by night. Sometimes Bushido was a burden, like for the 47 Ronin, whose loyalty led them to sacrifice everything for a master who could never repay them. Sometimes it was a comfort, a shield in a world of shifting loyalties and secret betrayals. Technology changed the samurai too. For centuries, the bow and sword ruled the battlefield, each weapon a symbol of skill and heritage. But with Oda Nobunaga's embrace of firearms, the very meaning of warfare shifted. Muskets and cannons broke the old rules, let peasants kill lords from a distance, and forced even the greatest warriors to adapt or fade away. Some samurai cursed these changes, clinging to the old ways. Others saw opportunity, proving that the heart of a warrior was not just in tradition, but in adaptation and wit. And behind every story of men with swords, there were women holding their own, often unseen, lines. Some, like Tomo Gozen, rode into battle, fierce as any man, her name whispered in the same breath as the greatest heroes. Others ruled from the shadows, as mothers, wives, and even regents, like Hojo Masako, the nun shogun who steered the country through crisis after her husband's death. In castle towns, women organised defences, managed estates, taught sons and daughters the meaning of resilience. Their courage was often quieter, but just as vital, their strength another thread in the tapestry of the samurai world. Samurai life was never just about fighting. Poetry, painting, calligraphy, and the slow beauty of a tea ceremony were as important as any campaign. Miyamoto Musashi, the peerless swordsman, was also a master painter and a philosopher. His brushwork and his duels both marked by the same restless intensity. The art of flower arranging, of ink on paper, of a perfectly placed stone in a garden, these too were acts of discipline and devotion, ways to balance the chaos of war with moments of stillness and creation. Death was everywhere, but so was a kind of stubborn hope. For every suicide on the blade, for every tragic fall, there were stories of new beginnings. Ronin teaching in distant villages, former warriors planting rice, children dreaming of glory beneath the moonlit eaves. Even as the old order faded, as the shogunate tightened its grip and the samurai lost their swords, the spirit lingered, quietly shifting into new forms. The Meiji Restoration swept away the world of castles and armour, but it couldn't erase centuries of stories, or the secret pride passed from parent to child. Sometimes, walking through modern Japan, you catch a glimpse, a festival drum echoing in the dusk, a weathered stone inscribed with forgotten names, a flash of steel in a kendo hall. The legacy of the samurai endures, not just in museums or movies, but in the language, the arts, and the quiet dignity of daily life. The lessons of endurance, of loyalty, of never giving up, even when the world turns upside down. These live on, hidden in plain sight. So in the end, the 6 levels are only a map. The real journey is longer, stranger, more complicated. It's made of mud and moonlight, sweat and silence, victories and defeats, the courage to fight and the grace to let go. Every rank, every person left something behind. A scar, a legend, a poem, a lesson for those yet to come. And as you drift off tonight, perhaps you'll remember the greatest stories are never just about heroes. They're about people, stubborn, hopeful, flawed, and endlessly resilient. In the world of the samurai, as in our own, it's not the sword alone that cuts deepest, but the choices we make, the lives we touch, and the stories we leave behind. And so, as our journey comes to a close, you realise that the story of the samurai is not just a tale of battles or bloodlines, but a long, winding road through the heart of what it means to live and to endure. Whether you started as a barefoot Ashigaru in a muddy field, or rose to command armies and rule from high-walled castles, every life in this world was marked by struggle and hope, by fear and courage, by moments of quiet beauty, and by nights when the only thing left was to hold on until morning. Maybe you found yourself in the discipline of the page, or the weariness of a wandering Ronin. Maybe you saw a piece of your own longing in the stories of lords burdened by power, or the ordinary people holding families together beneath the shifting banners of distant wars. Every rank, every path, left something behind, a scar, a lesson, a fragment of an old poem, or a memory that still drifts like wood smoke through the countryside. The world the samurai built is gone now, castles turned to ruins, swords resting silent behind museum glass. But the echoes remain, in the careful bow of a craftsman, the hush of a tea room, the courage to face what cannot be changed. In every struggle for honour or meaning, in every act of kindness or stubbornness, a little of that spirit lingers. So tonight, as you let your thoughts settle and your eyes grow heavy, remember, greatness is not just measured in victories or titles. Sometimes it is found in the way you endure, in how you treat others, in the stories you share, and in the hopes you quietly nurture through the dark. The journey of the samurai was always about more than war. It was about how to live, and most of all, how to keep going, one day, one step, one sunrise at a time. Thank you for travelling this path with me. Rest well, and may your dreams be filled with gentle winds and stories worth telling.